The main reason why you lose at chess is your inability to calculate the variations properly. Just imagine, if you're gonna improve just this one skill alone, it's gonna improve your chess level tremendously. After playing chess for 20 years, becoming an international master, learning from the best of the best, as well as being a professional chess coach for 8 years, I am ready to share with you the system I use to calculate the variations in my games so that you can do exactly the same and just destroy your opponents. What's up, chess player, and welcome to the Journey to Grandmaster, the place where you can improve every single aspect of your chess game. So I want to solve this epic puzzle together with you. It's why to move. First of all, I want to ask you to pause the video for a second. Believe me, it's going to be so much more efficient if you're going to be involved yourself and try to do it your way first, and then I'm going to share with you my decision-making process, my thought process, so that you can apply it to your games as well. So why to move? Pause the video, try to calculate the variations, not just guess the move, it's not really helpful, but really consider different alternatives, see what's happening on the board, and then make your variation, and then you are going to be able to compare it with mine and of course with the right one. Alright, I really hope you have taken your time. Let's get started. So first of all, always and always, the first thing I do once I get a position or once I start to think about it during my real game, what is happening, what is going on the board. You cannot really solve the problem if you don't understand what is the problem. And calculation is basically a problem-solving process. So first of all, we need to understand what are we playing for? Are we trying to survive? Are we trying to checkmate our opponent? What is the current status quo? And here we can see that the material is equal. We have two pair of rooks for both of the sides, two pair of bishops, and each side has 4 pawns, so absolutely equal material. Then we also always need to take a look at the king's safety. It's always important because if checkmate is coming, it doesn't matter if you have an extra queen or something. But in this case, we don't have any queens on the board at all, which means that there is not such a huge danger for the king anymore. Okay, otherwise we have here a lot of pieces hanging. This bishop on c4 is hanging, this rook on c7 is hanging, so that's the second question we have to address. We are playing as white, and before considering our options, the golden rule is to think what our opponent is threatened, because we never play chess alone. We have our opponent with his ideas, dreams, hopes, and threats, and we really need to take into account that if he wants to be proficient at chess. So yes, that is a threat, bishop is hanging, that is a threat, rook is hanging, and we absolutely have to think about that. As for our king, it's not really in danger, so we don't need to worry about that. Now, we have acknowledged this threat. This bishop on c5 is well protected, as well as this b6 pawn, so those two things are the only threats that our opponent is creating. Although, well, that's quite a lot. I mean, we have two really major pieces hanging. That's not something you can easily ignore. Afterwards, we start to consider our options. So we have here the method that consists of 3 steps. The first step is to find out all of the promising opportunities. We, in chess, call it candidate moves, or just, promising ideas, opportunities that you might have at a respective moment in the game. So, what could be the candidate moves in this position? First of all, you always start with the most active opportunities: checks, captures, and threats. Because, well, if you can give a check to your opponent, then he doesn't have any opportunity, any time to attack your pieces. So he's basically frozen. So that is always very interesting, and also like the end goal in the chess game is to give a checkmate. So of course you look at the opponent's king and try to decide whether you can create some danger. Well, the only check here is rook to c8. By the way, you have to be open-minded. It's not like you think, okay, that move is blundering the rook and you immediately stop the variation. No, you need to think a little bit more about it. Maybe you blunder a rook, but next move you have some crazy continuation that actually gives a checkmate. Everything can happen. In this case, I calculate the variation, rook to c8, rook takes back, and I don't really have any good follow-up, so I dismiss that variation. Then I go on with the second step, which is captures. What can I take in this position? Well, I can take here the rook on c6, I can take here the bishop on e6, and I can take here the b7 pawn. Those are the 3 captures that are available. But it doesn't necessarily mean that I consider all of them as candidate moves. Candidate moves are those that I consider to be reasonable. For example, rook takes b7, I can dismiss it as not really legitimate option here, because after rook takes b7, once again, I don't really have any follow-up, I just blunder a rook. Okay, rook takes c6 and bishop takes c6, e6 both seem to be more than reasonable, so those are my candidate moves. But I don't stop here, I continue with the third step, which is threats. How can I create a threat? For example, my bishop here is hanging, but if, I don't know, I would have a pawn on a6 and I can move it to a7 now, attacking the b8 rook, that would be a counter threat, and I don't care if my opponent takes my bishop, since I can take his rook and promote my queen. Unfortunately, that's not realistic for me here. I don't really see any counter threats that I can create. Maybe I can play rook e7. Yeah, because that would pin this bishop, and if it takes, I can take this guy on e5. But if I continue the variation a little bit, I see that my rook is hanging here, and at least so far, that doesn't seem like a promising opportunity for me. Okay, I can just protect my bishop on c4, or maybe play bishop to b5, attacking here, so those might be the opportunities. Then you have the list of all of the choices that you consider to be possible. So let's say rook takes e6, bishop takes e6, bishop to b5, maybe pawn to b5, because I also attack the rook. Like, I understand I absolutely have to be active here. I cannot just make a move like king to g2, king to h2. I don't need to waste my time considering those moves, because I know my opponent is creating a huge threat of just winning my bishop for free. Like, nothing like king to h2 or king g2 would be sufficient enough to create a compensation for that threat, create a counter threat. So I know I have to be active enough. Also, if I just go back with bishop e2, then he takes on c7, and to say the least, he's winning the exchange. I don't really have any compensation for it. So once again, it's not enough. Okay, so rook c6, bishop e6, b5, bishop b5, rook c1, yeah, that actually feels to be passive enough. Once again, he just takes my exchange. Okay, so now I have a list. Let's go on through the list, not starting and finishing with the first option I have, but really considering all of the options, comparing it, and then, like, that's the second step. The first one was to find all of the candidate moves. The second one is to compare it, analyze and compare, and the third one is to choose the best one. Okay, the second step is, of course, the most complicated, because here we really need to calculate the variations, and very, very important, we not only think about our moves here, but we also try to find the best move for our opponent, because he's not gonna sit there and make a move you like. He's gonna try to do all he can to find the best move for himself. All right, so let's start with the most active opportunities, like we are choosing it, the list, the same way we are starting to consider it. I guess rook takes c6 is the most active move, because we are grabbing like the biggest piece we can, the rook in this case. Rook takes c6, now our opponent has two choices. You also use the same system for your opponent. You start with the most active opportunities, checks, captures, and threats. You don't consider any passive moves for your opponent. So rook takes c6, no checks available for him, so he can capture either back the rook or my bishop on c4. Both are very, very reasonable. Okay, let's start with the most active, taking the rook back. So rook takes c6, pawn takes c6. Do we have a good follow-up? If we just exchange everything, take the bishop on a6, he takes back, then we have this passer along the b file, which feels quite promising. The question is, though, how do we make progress? Since the material is equal, if we don't make any progress, then we don't win the game. We can play something like actually rook a1 is not a move at all. The bishop is dealing with this threat. I'm just trying to find reasonable plan for myself. Like, it's important not only to calculate the variations. I see that rook takes e6, pawn takes, bishop takes, pawn takes. That would be some kind of a rook and bishop against rook and bishop endgame, but I need to evaluate that position, whether I'm going to be winning there or not. And that is actually even more difficult than calculate that variation for a few moves. Okay, so if I can somehow maybe bring my rook to g7, play b7, then bishop to a7 would be a huge, huge threat. That sounds like a very promising plan. But maybe my opponent, if I play rook d1, for example, he can just play rook to b7 and control that 7th rank, and then I never make any progress. At least I don't see it. Of course, I have a check, the king just moves, and then how on earth would I make any progress here? That doesn't seem to be that good. Maybe I play rook d8, rook c8, attack the c6 pawn, and slowly but surely I'm gonna make some progress with those passers. Because also this e6 pawns would be doubled. Yeah, that seems interesting. Okay, so let's say that position feels to be better for me. I have the upper hand, and my opponent is totally passive, and I am the one in the driver's seat. I really like it, so psychologically it would be very difficult for him to play. But let me check another opportunity for my opponent. Remember, you always need to find the best one for him. The rook takes c6, maybe he takes here on c4, because now both of my rooks are hanging. What do I do in this case? Well, the first thing that jumps to my mind is rook to c1, just to remove this rook from the attack and attack my opponent's bishop. Now he just goes back with the bishop, then I'm left with an extra exchange, so basically he has to take. Then I'm taking on c4, and once again we have a similar endgame, but his pawn is not doubled anymore. He can just play f5, defend the pawn, and yeah, maybe I can play bishop e3 back, attacking the d6 pawn, but just bishop d6, rook takes, bishop takes. Yeah, maybe I win there the pawn on h6 and would be a pawn up. Yeah, that actually also feels to be interesting. Let's now try the second capture we have here, bishop takes e6, and analyze it and compare with rook takes e6. If we take there, if he takes back with the pawn, then we have basically the same line if you take rook takes c6. But if you take here with the bishop first, he can just take with the rook. And then we no longer have that option, and our rook is hanging. And I actually don't really like this option. Now we need to get away from this attack, like rook d7 or something. But then, yeah, we are still more active. I feel like white is actually still better with such an active rook here. The rook on b8 is very, very passive. This video is brought to you by Chestnut. Chestnut is making amazing chessboards that allow you to play online from a real 3D board. They have high quality chessboards, nice looking chess pieces, so that you can enjoy and having fun playing it. Chestnut boards also have so many training functions that I absolutely love to use to my training, and it helps me to improve my chess every day. This is, for example, Chestnut Evo. I love to use it for my trainings, but they have so much to offer you depending on your preferences and your budget. And the best part is you can just use the promo code Journey to Grandmaster or click the link in the description to get a big discount on all of the Chestnut products. Okay, bishop takes e6. Our opponent also has bishop takes c7. Now pawn takes, and the rook is hanging, so rook takes, yeah, but then bishop just goes back and we have two bishops for a rook. That is a tremendous advantage. Also, we have, instead of going back with the bishop to d6, basically pinning all of those rooks and getting one of them. Yeah, that is just an extra piece. So after bishop takes e6, there is no bishop takes e7. At least I don't see how to make it possible for black. So bishop e6, he has either to take it back. I guess rook takes e6 is the most reasonable move. Then rook goes to d7, because rook e7 is just an exchange. And afterwards, yeah, I'm not sure what our plan is, because black also is not gonna just wait. He's gonna play f5, f4, e3, try to shake here the position, create some counterplay, maybe some threats against the white's position on the king side. So yeah, I'm not that convinced. And I also am curious about this b5 variation, because it's none of the captures, but it's attacking the rook, and you cannot really ignore it. Like, the rook is hanging. If you take on c5, I just take it back with the rook. Ah, wait, maybe there is bishop d6 in that variation, because the rook is hanging, but maybe I can go back to c7. So b5, rook takes, c5, rook takes c5, bishop d6, rook c7 back. Now if you take on c4, I just take it and I have an extra exchange. If you take on c7, I take it on c7, rook c8, bishop takes, e6, pawn takes, and b6. And that position is absolutely winning. So b5 seems to be interesting. Let's consider black's option. First of all, if the same bishop takes c4 variation, now we just take with the pawn on c6. He might take on f1. I guess we just take it back on f1, although then he takes c. Maybe we play something like pawn takes b7, yeah, but then bishop a6 back. So b5, bishop c4, we need to be careful here. I think either we take the rook on c6 or we lose, so we have to take. Now he takes on f1. Currently, we are like a bishop down, so we absolutely have to find something active right now. If we just take it back, and he takes our rook on c7, that should be a good variation for us. We take back, we attack the rook, rook goes to c8, we take on b7, we promote the pawn and win the game. That's all right. But after king f1, he can just take back on c6, and now we also take it back. And we once again have that kind of an endgame where we should be better because this b pawn is advanced, is a passer, but this time it's not doubled because we exchanged that pawn, and I guess this position is just much better for black. Sorry, for white. I like it. We have a protected passer by the bishop here, by the rook as well. We attack the h6 pawn there. The king can go towards the center. I guess that is an overwhelming advantage. Okay, let's say I like that. What else? b5. If he just takes on c7, that is the variation we have not considered yet. Then, once again, I want to take on c6 with the pawn. Now his bishop on c7 is hanging, my bishop on c4 is hanging. He cannot take on c4 because I take on c7, on b7, and once again winning. So he has to do something about that. He can take on b6 and attack my second bishop. I take it back. Now he has to take on c4, because if he takes on c6, I just take on e6 and I have an extra bishop. He takes on c4 and I play c7, intermediate move. He goes with the rook somewhere. Then we have opposite colors bishops. Like, yes, I have this passer, but he goes back with the bishop e6, and I'm not sure I'm going to be able to make any progress here. So b5, bishop takes c7. If I just take back on c7, I don't think it's going to be enough. Rook takes c7, I can play bishop d6, but just bishop takes c4, and I'm definitely not the one winning. So b5, bishop takes c7, I have to take on c6. Then he takes on b6. Maybe I have something here. If I take on e6, I don't have anything yet. So wait, I do have. I take on e6, he takes on c5, and I play c7 and win the game. Yes, that is a cool variation. That works for me. So b5, what can be wrong with it? Rook takes c7. That is also a legitimate option, just to take. I'm attacking the rook, he just takes. If I play b takes c, he plays bishop takes c7. And then I actually don't see anything. I'm losing a pawn. I can take on a6, he takes back. Then I haven't achieved anything. Okay, then maybe b5 is actually not such a great idea. And you see why it's so important to think about all of the legitimate options, not only for yourself, but also for your opponent. Because, yeah, rook takes c7 is just destroying my entire idea. Okay, what else did I have? I had rook to c1, but I don't believe in it at all. To say the least, the same rook c7 variation, although, yeah, maybe not for sure. Maybe just rook c1, just bishop takes c6, c4, sorry. Yeah, then rook takes c6 is possible. Okay, so rook c1, maybe bishop takes c7. Pawn takes, rook takes. Now if bishop d6, we even have rook takes c4. If bishop e6, we just take it back. Yeah, I don't see anything there. All right, so rook c1 is too passive. And then we are back to the main two candidate moves, rook takes c6 and bishop takes c6. One of them has to be correct, but it's about some move order, I feel here. Like, if I take on c6, then maybe bishop c4 is a problem. If I take on e6, then maybe rook takes e6 is a problem. And I need to evaluate those resulting positions. This is like the most difficult part, because we all can calculate the variations for a few moves, and sometimes even correctly, but then the challenge is to calculate the resulting position from this variation, compare it with this one, and understand which one is better and take the right decision. Okay, so rook takes c6, that feels like the most straightforward move. Now if pawn takes, just bishop takes, and once again we have this endgame, which I think is much better for white. We even have some plans like just rook e1, grabbing that pawn. Yeah, that is absolutely incredible for us. So rook takes c6, he has to take on c4. But now I like this option of rook c1. He takes it back with the, like if he goes back with the bishop, I have an extra exchange, he has to take, I take back with the rook, and then this endgame once again should be really better for me. e4 is hanging, if he plays f5 to defend it, I play bishop e3, I attack there, then I have b5 ideas against rook c8, otherwise I just win a pawn. Yeah, that is a very, very good position, very promising one. And if I play bishop takes e6, then after rook takes e6, yeah, I don't feel that is that convincing. Yes, I can play rook d7, but then how do I really make progress? He has his chances. So I really like more the rook takes c6 variation. Yeah, that would be my conclusion out of, first of all, my calculation process and my decision-making process, because I think rook takes c6 is the best move in the position. Let's compare it with yours and with the right one here in this book. I really like to work with Chestnut Evo in combination with Forward Chess, because I have here the Grandmaster preparation book I'm working on. I have here all of the positions, and once I'm done with the my solution, I can take a look at the right solution over here. All right, let's take a look at it. Rook takes c6. Yes, that does seem like the right solution here. By the way, I also like the opportunity to click here and see some maybe variations here on this board, so that I don't need to make all of the moves here, but that's the key variation, so let's make it here as well. Bishop takes c4 and then rook c1. Okay, but then bishop e6 back, and that's not the end of the variation. I actually haven't thought about it. Just going back, I don't know, I thought, yeah, maybe here just rook to c7, that would lead to that opposite colors bishop variation that I didn't like. Maybe I have some improvement. I haven't taken a look at the solution yet. Let me think. I like the move bishop to d6 because that's attacking the bishop and the rook, but he can still just take. If I take it there, then he has two bishops for rook. Yes, I have this passers on the b file, but still two bishops are so strong. I never like to play against it. Although I have a very direct idea. b7, rook c8. That actually feels very strong. Bishop d6 takes, bishop takes b8, bishop takes b8, rook takes c6, and then b7, rook c8 seems to be unstoppable actually. And otherwise, if the rook goes away, yeah, that might be another reason, rook a8. And then if my rook goes back, then I just lose the bishop on d6, and if I take on e5, he takes back, and yeah, but that is winning. I have just b7 win immediately. Yeah, bishop d6 actually seems to be very strong. Yeah, bishop d6. The intermediate move, very simple really. Instead, if we take on e6, then after f takes and bishop e3, that was played in the game. And by the way, Jakob Agard, the author of this book, has played this game himself, and he won it eventually, but that was much more difficult if we just play rook takes bishop to d6 instead over here. And finally, if b takes c, then we have just rook takes c4, f5, and bishop is, yeah, exactly as I thought. Now the whole black's position is basically collapsing because too many weaknesses. You cannot handle it. Imagine how cool it would be to play chess without ever having opening troubles again. What if I told you I could teach you all openings you will ever need in just 10 days? You get lifetime access to more than 110 pure value video tutorials, almost 100 practical tasks to apply your knowledge immediately into practice, 30 plus bonus videos to dive 10 times deeper, as well as private community where all questions you might ever have are answered daily. Get a $200 limited time discount with the link in the description and forget about all opening pain once and for all. So this was my system, how I calculate the variations. Of course, I understand that you cannot immediately just calculate the variations on the same level as I do. You're not that experienced yet. But if you're gonna use this system, I guarantee that you're gonna be much more efficient with your calculation. And as a result, of course, you're going to become much stronger at chess. So let me know in the comments what you think about it. And here I go in more details about it. I try to solve a very difficult puzzle using the method from one of the best coaches in the world, Jakob Agard.